Since the release of Dark Souls, countless Souls-likes have emerged over the years, yet only a handful have truly managed to stand out. And the original Mortal Shell is definitely not one of them. It was a decent game, but it came across more like a proof of concept than a fully realized experience. Now 6 years later, Cold Cemetery returns with Mortal Shell 2. And I have to say, this game represents one of the most massive leaps I have seen from a sequel in a long time. It takes the strongest elements of the original, most notably its shell system, and expands them into something far more ambitious and refined, with a larger and more interesting world to explore, significantly better combat and animation work, and far greater build variety and customization. Overall, unlike the original Mortal Shell, I think this sequel has earned its place among the best Souls-likes. On the technical side, Mortal Shell 2 is built on Unreal Engine 5 and makes use of many of its major features, including Lumen, Nanite, and virtual shadow maps. Visually, despite occasionally suffering from that generic Unreal look and some of the engine's typical issues, Mortal Shell 2 benefits from a beautiful and distinct art direction that helps it stand out. Both the enemies and the environment share a dark, decayed, and corrupted aesthetic that gives the game a unique visual identity and fits its atmosphere perfectly. On the performance side, the game is pretty decent given that it's using many of UE5's major features. But when it comes to performance stability, things get a bit mixed. At first launch, the game goes through the usual shader compilation step. While this process does a decent job covering most shaders in the early areas, it does not fully eliminate all stuttering. There are still some occasional shader compilation hitches here and there, but to be fair, nothing game-breaking. As for Traversal Stuttering, the game does pretty well in this regard, especially considering its open zone level design. Some frame time spikes can still occur, but it's far from being a stutter fest. It's worth noting, however, that this test was conducted with Reflex disabled, and I had to use an Engine.ini tweak to disable it as there is currently no in-game option to do so, and Reflex is forced on even when frame generation is disabled. And as you can see here, disabling Reflex cleans up the frame time graph and reduces micro stuttering. But of course, this comes at the cost of increased input lag, so I would only recommend doing this if you can achieve high frame rates without frame generation. When it comes to upscaling, the game supports FSR3, DLSS, and TSR. Unfortunately, TSR in particular is pretty subpar in this game, and exhibits a lot of shimmering and breakup similar to FSR3. There is an anti-aliasing setting, but despite its performance cost, it does not significantly improve TSR's image quality. And even when using native, there is no meaningful difference between the anti-aliasing options. So if you are using TSR, I recommend avoiding Ultra Anti-Aliasing. And if you have enough performance to spare and can't use DLSS or FSR4, I recommend ditching the in-game TSR at FSR3 and using FSR 4.1-inch through OptiScaler instead. This significantly improves image quality, but it comes with a higher performance cost. You can alleviate some of that performance hit by using a lower rendering mode, such as balanced instead of quality, while still preserving a much cleaner image than FSR3 or TSR. Let's move on to the graphics settings, starting with hardware ray tracing. There are two main issues with this option. The first is that hardware ray tracing cannot be enabled if any setting is dropped below high. Even those are related to global illumination and reflections like view distance and textures. The second and more impactful problem is that hardware ray tracing doesn't seem to be working at all. I tested it across multiple scenes and restarted the game several times, but I could not notice any performance or visual difference. So clearly this setting isn't working as intended, and for now I recommend leaving it disabled. Next, we have global illumination. This one controls the quality of lumens in direct lighting and mainly affects how light bounces around the scene. Low completely removes all bounced lighting, which negatively impacts the overall look of the game. Interestingly, medium actually produces more bounced lighting than high, and I noticed this across multiple scenes like here for example. Low also disables lumen reflections, leaving only screen space reflections enabled as you can see here. Another thing I found quite strange and something I've never seen before in a UE5 game is that global illumination also affects particle density. This isn't about how the lighting interacts with particles, but the actual particle count and how some effects behave. On the performance side, the biggest difference shows up when moving from low to medium, which costs around 13%, and moving up to ultra increases the cost to around 17%. So for global illumination, I would not recommend low as it has a noticeable visual impact. Use medium if you want to save some performance, or go all the way to ultra. Moving on to shadows, this one controls several visual aspects. First, it impacts the quality of virtual shadow maps. Going from low to medium improves the draw distance of these shadows. High cleans up the noise and reduces the grainy look, while ultra further reduces the noise and increases the softness of the shadows. This setting also affects the draw distance of some artificial lights, particularly noticeable when using ultra as you can see here. Finally, as is often the case with Unreal Engine 5 games, the shadow setting also have an impact on volumetric effects, such as these light shafts, which look more defined at high and ultra compared to low and medium. Performance-wise, there is around a 2% cost from low to high and about 7% when going to ultra. So for this one, I recommend high. Let's move on to view distance. This one adjusts the draw distance of non-nanite meshes like small foliage and grass as you can see here. As a result, low and medium exhibit noticeable pop-in compared to high and ultra. Performance-wise, I couldn't measure any meaningful difference between the options, so for this one I recommend ultra. Next, we have textures. This one adjusts the amount of VRAM allocated to texture streaming. And as long as there is enough VRAM available, there is no visual difference between low and ultra. But the game currently has an issue with texture streaming. As you can see here, some textures fail to load properly, resulting in noticeable streaming artifacts. This is more noticeable at the higher options, especially ultra, and it mostly occurs on some terrain surfaces near the beacons. When it comes to VRAM usage, the game is quite efficient. Even ultra texture quality is doable with 8GB of VRAM when using the optimized settings. But for now, I recommend sticking with high and avoiding ultra due to the streaming issues. And if pop-in still bothers you, drop textures down to low. Moving on to visual effects. When it comes to particles and special effects, this setting doesn't show any difference. As we saw earlier, that aspect is handled by global illumination. Where visual effects does make a difference is on close-range grass, which only animates when using ultra as you can see here. This setting also affects the shading quality, which alters the look of some surfaces when using high or ultra. Performance-wise, there is around a 4% cost when going from low to high, and about 7% when going further to ultra. So for this one, I recommend either sticking with medium to save some performance, or going all the way up to ultra. Let's move on to reflections. Using low or medium keeps only screen space reflections enabled, while moving up to high and ultra adds lumen reflections with no noticeable visual difference between these two options. Even in areas where lumen reflections exhibit some noise, high looks pretty much identical to ultra. Performance-wise, there is around a 6% cost from low to high and about 7% when going to ultra, so for this one I recommend high. Next, we have post-processing. Going from low to medium slightly increases bloom intensity. Moving to high adds a vignette effect, while ultra enables chromatic aberration, film grain, lens flare, and screen space light shafts. Now, the game does include individual toggles for these effects, but from what I have seen, the toggles for lens flare, chromatic aberration, and film grain don't work at all, and these effects remain enabled even when their respective settings are switched off. So for now, if you want more control over these effects, I recommend using the Engine.ini file, which I'll leave in the description and pinned comment below. As for the performance cost of post-processing, there is only a noticeable impact when using Ultra, which comes with around an 8% cost. Moving on to environment, this one controls the density of scattered objects, such as small rocks, grass, and other environmental elements. At Ultra, this setting also enables nanite tessellation, which adds more displacement and geometric detail to some surfaces. But this has a significant performance impact. In this scene, going from low to high costs around 4%, but moving up to Ultra results in an 18% hit. And in some indoor areas, the cost can be even higher. Therefore, I recommend keeping environment at high. Lastly, we have seamless dungeons loading. As the name indicates, this setting allows the game to seamlessly load dungeon areas and the background while moving through the world, reducing the need for noticeable loading when entering them. And I did notice some minor stuttering when entering this dungeon with this setting enabled, but nothing significant or game breaking. So unless you're playing on a slow SSD or an HDD, or you're having large stutters when entering dungeons, I recommend leaving this one enabled. So given everything we've discussed so far, these are my recommended settings for Mortal Shell 2. Now let's compare the performance of the optimized settings against the Ultra preset at 1440p using DLSS quality. And as usual, I am using low textures here to prevent any VRAM related issues when testing the Ultra preset. In this scene, we can see around a 46% performance improvement when going from the Ultra preset to the optimized settings. Moving on to another scene, and here the difference is slightly smaller with an average improvement of around 35%. Before ending the video, I want to give a quick shout out to my Patreon. If you are able and would like to directly support my work, consider becoming a patron to get early access to my optimized settings, as well as downloads of the highest possible quality of my latest videos, including this one. And a big thank you to all my supporters, and thank you as well for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and if not, leave a dislike. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.